everybody, this is David with No Chaser, and today's video is brought to you by our sponsor, Drugs and Alcohol. Pretty fun for a lot of people, but also destroyed my life. Anyways, so today's topic is, by the way, we got sunlight here. Sunlight, very important. This video is also brought to you by Sunlight. But today's topic was actually brought by one of the commenters, and by the way, if you comment on some topic that you want me to cover, I'll definitely consider it, unless it's like, is Die Hard a Christmas movie, or how cute do you think my dog is? Actually, I like dogs. I might consider the dog thing. But this person, I won't say their name because I don't know. But they brought up an interesting topic. Again, interesting in a dark sense because a lot of this stuff is pretty heavy and not fun, but important. And they wanted me to discuss the kind of what I call the phenomenon of relapse over time in sobriety, how relapses can get, as they put it, the progression is they can become more acute, but then also more severe. Now, in the recovery and addiction community, it's pretty well known that, there's kind of a saying is you pick up right where you left off, where you can go, months, years without drinking or using, but once you start again, maybe you start a little bit less, maybe you don't start like full blown where you are, but eventually you, as they say, you pick up right where you left off. So if you were drinking a fifth of vodka a day, you go a year without drinking, maybe you go back in like, oh, I'll just have beers, I can handle it. And then you have, I don't know, for the next 2 weeks, just a six pack, a couple of days, every day. Then you're back to the fifth, and then it will escalate. And, one thing too is that like I said, addiction is addiction. However, there are some important factors, when you're talking about drugs. So like one that I am unfortunately very aware of throughout my life. As I always say, I have dual citizenship where I'm addicted to drugs and alcohol. I started out with opiates, but the relapses with opiates when people have sobriety are particularly devastating. Recently I'd known someone that had very young and they had passed. And I feel like I say this on a lot of videos because part of the recovery community, if you stay with it, you see a lot of these cases, but they had about 4 months of sobriety from opiates, and then they relapsed and they overdosed and died. And that's actually something you see very, very common. Not only is it always tragic when someone ODs, but usually you'll see an OD from, again, opiates, fentanyl, stuff like that, because they've gone a while without using, and then they pick up right where they left off, kind of the amount they were using, and it's a shock to the body. However, if they don't OD, they will continue on that same path. It's this strange thing about drugs and alcohol where with your tolerance, some people, they kind of have it in an interesting idea where, like, let's say that because it's not just you pick up where you left off, it'll also get worse. So consider this. I really should have a graph or a whiteboard, but that would be professional, and I'm me. But let's say that, your addiction is just a line that slowly goes up as far as tolerance. The amount of drugs, meth, alcohol that you use just over time, whether you're using or not, like whether you're using, just goes up and up and up. How much you need to use to get drunk or high. Now, let's say if that little line's going up, but you stop using. Like you're not using. So that little line, that thing that's going up, right? Like a slow build up to a roller coaster, that should stop though, because you're not using drugs or alcohol. In a very strange sense, it doesn't, where it still is kind of going up and up and up, but you're not using. But let's say it keeps going, and then you pick up even years later, it will be at this higher point. And when you pick up, that's where you'll be at. Now that doesn't make sense to anybody, and a lot of this shit doesn't make any sense. It's why it's so baffling and awful. But the thing is that you will pick up where you left off, and then it escalates. And I have a couple of theories of kind of like why this occurs, like why relapses can get so crazy, especially like after time. It's one of these weird things is like the better you get, the worse they get. And I think there's, physiological factors and also like psychological factors to it. Like as a person who's basically an expert of relapse, with a lot of experience in the field, very sad. that I noticed, like, after time, like when I had like over a year when I drank, I know that I picked up where I had left off, and then the drinking escalated. Now, when I say the psychological effect too, especially if you were clean and sober for a while, is that when you've enjoyed that amount of time, the the shame that comes to you, even if it's one of those cases where you didn't drink for maybe even a couple of years or 2 years or something like that, and then you started drinking again. I'll just have beer, or that was a bad time in my life, I'm going to start drinking again. When you realize you get back into the cycle that you were in, the amount of guilt and shame you have is just compounded. And guilt and shame is the perfect, like jet fuel for like really taking off with your drinking and using. So that's a psychological factor to it as well. The other thing is that when you like addiction and alcoholism just gets worse over time. So as it gets worse, when you have seen success, you fall back into it, it can be more devastating and you can become more discouraged. And again, these are factors where if you have them in your mind and you start drinking and using again, it only makes your drinking and using worse. So like talking about how the relapses are more, acute, but like deadly and like way worse is, from my own personal experience is that I would go a couple of months without drinking. And then, when I drank, I kind of had like, this was, years and years ago, I had started drinking again. And then the tolerance started like cranking up just as it was, as it would if I had never stopped drinking. Right. But then when I had longer stints of sobriety, but then I'd relapse, the thing is that my benders or the binges didn't like last that long, which is usually a good thing. You want to, if you fall off the wagon, you want to get back on as soon as possible, but they would become much more destructive. Now, I know this isn't the case for everybody, but I know a lot of people from experience and testimony that this is how it occurs, where it just gets cranked into overdrive. Even with drugs too, is that when you've had longer bouts of, sobriety and clean time, when you pick up again, it is not only just that you're picking up where you left off, your tolerance builds up even faster. It's like it's exponential. And then with those psychological things, where you go, man, I thought I beat this stuff, or this shit's never going to end. You become more hopeless. You can become more desperate. And then again, like I said, these are just factors that really crank up the use. And and there's other things too, like there's sayings about like rehab is a good way to ruin the party. So like if you go to treatment, if you were somewhere in your life where things got so bad you had to go to inpatient treatment, once you go there, no matter how young you were, when you try to go back to just partying and stuff, that stays in your mind. Like even if you just was like, treatment's bullshit, or I don't really think I have a problem. When you've had that experience and you were put there, I mean, I can't imagine what like tiny fraction of percentage of people have gone to rehab that actually truly didn't need it. So even if you don't believe it, if you're in denial, there's something subconsciously that you'll gravitate to that like, this isn't good for me. So when you start drinking again, and even if you're in denial about your using or drinking, when you start doing it again, that's in the back of your head. Like another saying is like a bad place to be is with a head full of AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous, and a belly full of booze, where you have this knowledge of this, like, you can't do this. This is going to wreck your life. This is not going to be like fun. This is not going to be the way that you want it to be anymore, but you're still doing it. Again, all these sort of negative factors, it's just commonly known that things like guilt, shame, disappointment, hopelessness, these can really crank up your drinking and using habits. So again, those are the psychological effects. Physiological ones, I mean, I'm not a doctor, surprise. I don't really understand how it works as far as like tolerance goes, but like one thing is that, over time, especially with drinking, over time, your body, you just don't bounce back fast enough. I remember I used to be able to do like 80 milligrams of Oxycontin, drink all night, and I play pickup basketball in the morning, in my 20s. That is long gone. But there was also this other thing that started occurring that was really strange, where there was like a time I used to reference this, where I drank daily, where there was probably at least 2 years where I never would have blown double zeros on a breathalyzer. I wasn't super wasted the whole time, but I was drunk for about 2 years straight. And then when I went to detox, it's pretty not fun. Wouldn't recommend, but it was bad. But then, after like a longer amount of sobriety, I would have a very destructive and again acute sort of relapse, but it would only be maybe a week. But detoxing from that week of drinking felt just like detoxing from the 2 years straight of drinking. There are things like that I can't, like, I don't even know quite, like, just on a bodily level how they work. And again, this is not just about getting older, it's harder on your body, which it is, but it would feel, there was times like 3 days of drinking, the withdrawals would be just as bad as if I drank for a year. I mean, there's so many things that, like, again, it's hard to really even, I mean, basically a lot of this stuff that seems like a phenomenon is, I think, just little magical ways your body is like, dude, really, we should stop, please don't do this, please. And your body is just like, no, 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 we had sober time, we're not going back to this shit. So it like almost rebels against you. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting topic idea. Like, subscribe, do whatever. I have like some monetization thing. I think I've made 22 cents so far. So hello, new career. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, if you're still struggling out there, my heart goes out to you. If you're doing well, keep it up. If you're just interested in this topic or curious about it for you or a loved one, I hope you enjoyed it. And other than that, be well.